Yeah.
I like the
Now
middle
they're
one.
gone.
I don't know, those two guys and both sides were both very similar. Their answers were so.
Yeah, I feel like their whole game design approaches were
Too similar.
too similar.
A little derivative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in terms of look and feel of the inventor himself.
So were there any clear winners? Like, did anyone change their mind what the top game was from yesterday? So you guys all voted like in your favor of first, second, and third. Did anyone change their minds after talking to the contestants? Oh, why'd you get there? Take a hat.
Come up here.
Yeah.
And you'll be on the
Come-
microphone.
You're going to ask us
To
questions.
the hot
Let's ask
seat.
you questions.
Please moderate.
Welcome to the hot seat.
So what brought you to the middle of the room?
Did you all see how much Chris looked like Alan Rickman? This is strange.
What?
Alan Rickman.
I did not
No.
see that.
Did not see it at all. Now
Like I just got his
think of nothing
profile and it
else.
was so Snape. Like it
I
was
got his
very
profile
interesting.
quite often, and I didn't really.
I will say only one of my top 3 games made it into the finals, so.
So she hasn't changed her mind.
I haven't changed my mind.
Did they skew your decision when talking to the designers afterwards? Are any of you more impressed with the game designs that you've talked to them?
Kind of like the getting that little insight as to some of the mechanics. You think, oh, maybe it just kind of fell into place, but it seemed like some of them there was definitely a lot of intentional decisions behind some of that stuff, and I thought it was really neat to see there was some design process behind it, and it wasn't just a matter of kind of playtesting until it worked, and that there was some kind of philosophy behind it as well.
I'm interested to hear that Undiscovered is better as a 2-hour game. I mean, if he's really shooting for a 1-hour game, but he admits that he'd rather play a 2-hour game, it answers questions like, when will my deck develop?
Yeah,
How many
it's a
rounds
3
will
to
I
4 hour game in my opinion,
Yeah.
as it is, and it's.
So is it too many ingredients, or is he or is
Yeah.
the
Does
first
he think
experience
is
okay
it
at 1
market-
hour? I don't know.
Is it market pressure or something? that
Yeah,
he's
I mean,
trying
Yeah.
to
I
get
think
a shorter
we
experience?
we've only played a half hour of it if we played it
Right.
at all, and
Yeah.
so we can't really see even what a 1 hour experience
Yeah.
feels like. But it's interesting that he would rather play for 2. It just that's not for everyone. That's just for me.
Yeah, but I thought it was really interesting that he wanted to build that he started with a deck builder for it, as I want to build a deck builder, and just threw 2 of the major aspects of almost all deck building games that I've ever seen out the window.
No card draw in a turn.
Yeah, no card draw in a turn, and let's do increasingly longer cycles of your deck over the course of the
That
game.
just means
Well-
he's trying to explore the space. There's nothing wrong with doing that if you find something good.
Oh, I know. I'm not sure he got that to the place where he found something good.
We all
but
have opinions
it's
about deck
interesting.
builders.
Both of his games, I felt he had like a lot of material and concepts, and for his games, I felt like a development team would basically have to take those and strip like 30-40% out of them to get the actual game. But I felt like he kind of did a lot of design and development to get to the stage where they were at. The middle game I kind of felt was complete and just needed basically number balancing, versus his where I felt like I was going to have to kind of sculpt stuff off and figure out what the actual final game would be.
Specifically for Dragon Family, which parts do you think might have needed some sculpting?
Right now, it kind of had like the 3 terrain thing was, and the pawns positioning, the feeding. There was like a couple things on that I felt were kind of the fact that your pawn had to be kind of had to move and be adjacent to the thing you were replacing and move on.
The planning in it is very difficult to plan to be like, I'm building these forests and I'm going to put a forest dragon in it, when that just might not be able to happen based on your random draws. And also the pacing of it, where you're just like, okay, I fed it up and oh no, I'm not in the right place. Now I have to get a guy over there and feed the dragon again. There was a lot of those are the kind of issues I had.
And like I would certainly get rid of if you can't feed your dragon, you lose things, because that's just like a pound.
You're
the low
already
man.
getting a
Really?
-1 from not
It's
feeding
already a
it.
pound the
Yes.
low man
Yeah.
mechanic, so it's like you don't need to compound it. So like,
Well,
Sadness. But I did feel like Dragon Family, especially with the development team being able to go in and make and fiddle with changes like how your tile hand management works and how feeding the dragon works, it would be a tight, clean, delightful, charming little game.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements of that game that are randomly giving points to one player and not to another, and it's an overwhelming number of them. Like, I was always in the location that I needed to be. I always drew the dragon that I needed, but everything went right for me, so, you know, I had a good time. And I think that if you could look at, for instance, the short moves, and give someone a longer move, let them teleport between cities
Right.
or something.
Or
You
just
already
teleport to the
actually
space
have a
you
fast
want.
move in that game, because as soon as you settle one dragon, you place a new token anywhere you want. It's just that you don't really think of it as a fast move, but it's in there. Like, I think, A, we're missing things that really are there. B, the problems, for instance, in the dragon game aren't really that hard to fix.
Yeah.
Short moves are easy to fix with longer moves.
True, but as you often tell me, we need to judge based on what the game is, not on what we think it could be.
Yeah, that's true, but all of these are lacking
Yeah.
in a similar way.
Yeah. I also just had the most fun playing Dragon Family. I thought it had some really charming features like what's the egg gonna be? Like,
That's a darling he needs to murder. He loves the
Yeah.
secret. He loves the secret discovery of the dragon card. Oh, I don't know what color this is until I hatch it, but I've been collecting random resources for no reason because of what cards I was dealt.
yeah.
In anticipation of getting a red one, and I never got a red one. Like that,
Right.
you gotta find some workaround for that.
Yeah. Sure. But
Because
I
the
think you
delight
can-
of getting a child you weren't expecting is nothing compared to the horror of trying to feed it.
I will say yes, we all have to murder our darlings, but if they are also the players' darlings, maybe they shouldn't be
But he's
murdered.
identifying it as something players like because it's something he likes. Players like lots of things about that game.
Well, she just said that she liked it.
Yeah. No, I
know,
like
but,
it.
But in context of now try to win the game, I think it needs to go.
Well,
But
think
I also think it creates interesting strategic points of like, okay, now I have this dragon, what's the best way for me to utilize it? And maybe it's building it so I can encroach on this giant area that Paul has already made and taking some
Maybe
of
it
those
is,
points
but
for
wouldn't
my
you
own.
rather have that information one turn sooner?
Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
have any information
As
one
soon
turn
as I
sooner,
as
because
soon as
wanna
I
win.
drew a dragon egg, I looked at it because it seemed clear to me that I wanted to know what kind it was. And he was like, "Oh no, that's a secret." And I was like, "Okay, fine, I won't know this for a round." But like, I think that I obviously thought that was how it should work, and I still do think that's how it should work. A little more information a little earlier will be a more strategic game.
I mean, there are other solutions where if you just had a whole bunch of dragons and it wasn't, the problem is that it's difficult to get the dragon you need. There are much more.
Well, because there's a
solutions.
specific 1-to-1 ratio of dragons to resource type.
There could be
Currently.
drafting, there could be
Yeah,
trading, there could be all kinds
Yeah.
of solutions. All we're really doing is
Yeah.
identifying the problem.
But yeah.
Right, and that seemed to be a problem with both Dragon Family and Point Salad for me, was that both of them I felt like when I walked away from the game at the end, I didn't really have a better strategy of what to do other than get better draws or better tiles or better, like.
Pray to RNGesus.
I mean, like.
You don't believe the answer on point salad that there's actually a lot more there and watching what other people are drafting?
Well, when I'm
there is,
watching,
we saw that.
yeah, I mean that's true in Magic. But if if I'm in a Magic draft and the person next to me is black, I get like a good black card at the beginning, and then the person next to me starts drafting black. I've just lost. It's like, I mean, because I
Yeah.
can't.
I think you're
can't
comparing
play-
that experience unfairly to the experience of point salad, which is not a Magic draft.
Well, Liz lost
Yeah.
because I took a card that basically hurt her strategy, and it ended.
But then Liz could
Take another
flip that
card.
point card into a different vegetable and go for a different strategy.
And then
That's
I would,
why
but I would have
find that-
erased all my points at that
Yeah.
point. Like the market volatility, I think that he talked about several times is a real weakness of the game because it's a game about building tableaus, but there's almost no way to predict what you're going to be able to do on your turn when it comes around again.
Does anybody remember the rules? Is it a single game or is it scored over multiple rounds?
Single game.
Single game, I
Single
believe.
game? Okay.
I mean,
I
it
always
is
play
shorter
multiple.
game, so
Yeah,
a little
multiple rounds could be.
Well, the difference is between whether I got a victory, which is 1 point, versus everyone getting 0,
Right.
or if every point that I collect is relevant in a total score.
Right.
Because then I can care about coming in second.
Yeah, but I really felt there was in the effort to make every point scoring card different, perhaps, there's a lot of point scoring cards. Like there's clear winners and losers in what those cards are, and it's a very good chance on your turn that you're going to get mediocre, terrible as your 3 options. And so, I would want to find, because I don't think the variation in ways to score points is the core fun of that game.
That's interesting because I honestly believe him when he said that he has seen people win the game with a large lead in different scoring ways.
Yeah.
And I think actually the opposite of what you're saying. I can totally see that, like, if you are going for a certain thing, I lost going a certain way, but I can see how I could have won in a different game, going a very different direction of, he might think that those point scores are the bad ones, but if I only go for those and I end up with very little cards but lots of points, I could still win it.
The negative points are awful. I would just throw those out.
Oh, the negative
set them
ones.
on
That's
fire.
interesting.
Yeah, I had a turn where I had like 2 cards that were the negative point cards, and then the other one was just stuff that I hadn't been collecting at all yet. And I'm like, well, that sucks. But also imagine a world like, I think like the having a complete set. Get points for having a complete set. There's only 1 copy of that in the whole deck. So,
I don't know, I found the negative interesting, at least for the game I played. Everyone else had negative points for peppers, so I knew that I could pick up scoring cards for peppers very easily and without any competition on there. And then other people had to kind of make this decision of like, are they going to let me have these peppers? How many are they going to flip their score cards over? And I think it adds an extra element, extra dimension, kind of.
Well, in multiplayer games, that typically isn't a great decision. It's like if I'm negative drafting against one particular person, I'm going down against the rest of the field.
And
Like
so
I
that's the
played.
thing in the 3-player game. If someone else has a negative pepper card, then you might think twice about doing a negative pepper card, because then that leaves peppers completely wide open for a 3rd player. And I think that's kind of.
yeah, but I'm saying with experience, you're going to know not to draw those negative point
I
cards.
don't
You'll
think
just
that's necessarily true,
really?
because
They're
like,
not strictly negative, they also have a high point value for one thing.
right, exactly. Like I had
Yeah.
2 negative things, and I
Never took
never
any.
drafted them, and I
You're rarely,
never.
until the end, forced to take a vegetable that's negative.
Right.
And you can also play in a reverse way. A lot of people start by getting a point card and drafting vegetables in need. So in my experience, I actually like just drafting vegetables.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I started drafting vegetables and then looked for cards that specific. Like I chose my strategy at the beginning. I'm going to go for these 3 things, and then I'm just going to collect point cards that
But it is a bit more of a bet, because
Sure.
those
Yeah, you have to
scoring
luck into
positions
those
may or may
cards.
not come up.
Right.
right.
So-
Yeah, and part of the strategy of everyone else at the table is when we see the cards that are going to benefit
Sure.
that strategy, we got to
Take
get
'em,
rid of them.
yeah.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of interesting player interaction that's.
Yeah, there's plenty of interaction for what they're going for, which is a family game. Like we're holding a lot of these points to a standard that's higher than that game requires.
Right. Yeah. Even he admits that there needs to be more balancing of what the things on the back are, and absolutely, and maybe the point values are wrong for what they should be, but yeah, I don't think anything. I don't think they're bad in any way.
So if we're ready to move on to the next thing, one thing I'm interested in kind of seeing what people think is that, like, Dragon Family and Point Salad are much like smaller in scope and maybe tighter, smaller designs, whereas Undiscovered is kind of this lot of things going on, which I imagine makes it easier to point out flaws of the game. So, like, how are we weighting like a tight design versus one that maybe has a lot more going on, has more potential, or it's kind of hard to compare a light filler game like Point Salad to something like Undiscovered, which could be an hour, 2-hour game. I don't know, what are people's thoughts on that?
I mean, I personally want to see that a game delivers on its promise. So if you have a deck building exploration game, that it fulfills the joys of I'm building a deck and I'm exploring, even if we only get to play like an hour of it. Whereas I expect a fast filler game with a lot of point strategy to be really tight and very functional when we see it. Big games, I care less, because there's a lot more levers to pull.
Right. One of my things on Point Salad was like I was looking at it and I'm like, well, would I rather play this or Sushi Go? I mean, it was kind of like I was comparing it to similar types of games in the genre, and just the variance on it just seemed way higher.
It's an interesting question. I think a bunch of the contestants got together and hung out after we all kind of vacated yesterday. And it was interesting how they do feel like the longer games have a disadvantage in the contest a bit. It's something I think we'll look at for future LUCIs. like whether we can get longer play times and that sort of thing. I'm glad to hear that you guys are comparing type game X with like what it should be delivering. I think that's a good way to kind of put that out there. Interesting. We haven't talked about Undiscovered a lot, like, or I haven't deliberated a lot about Undiscovered. Like what it seems, or as much as Dragon and.
I mean, maybe just the kind of game I like. That I found of the 3 games, I think I might have enjoyed Undiscovered the most and kind of wanted to keep playing it. Whereas, point style is very tight, and I'd gladly play it over and over again. Dragon Family, I'm not sure if I liked having the pressure of feeding all the dragons all the time. In terms of just the amount of fun I had, I feel like for me, Undiscovered had me wanting more, I guess. That's just my preference.
Cool.
There's a lot of interesting things going on. And we didn't talk much about the cargo mechanic and saving cards for other turns, but I thought that was actually kind of a little brilliant for, like, I mean, a lot of those games you have 5 and you can keep 1 or you don't discard and things like that to keep things going for further turns. But his of just like, oh, I'm going to choose to set this one aside and use it on a later turn.
I actually think his taxation mechanic is a compromise between just building up resources and any other deck builder where you lose everything every turn.
Right.
So that's what it looked like to me, and I wasn't playing. I was watching you do it, and you're like, hey, I lose half of this. And I thought, well, in every other deck building game I know, you would have lost all of it as soon as your turn was over. So I think it clips at an arbitrary moment, and maybe you have a lot of gold right when your deck happens to be empty, and
Right.
it's really hard to plan for that, and surely that's not what the game is supposed to be
Yeah.
about, but I think it's an attempt to like find a balance.
It feels
Yeah,
like
I
it's
think he
a
could
version.
honestly
Eating
could
a
have accomplished the exact same thing with just having a limit on how much you can
Yeah,
accumulate.
he could have gold cargo too, and
Yeah,
that would do that job also.
Yeah. One thing I really did like about the game is that it kind of captured a lot of 4X games are one of my favorite genres. And it captured a lot of the fun of those, like, oh, we're building ships and we're going out and exploring and things. But it was very tight. Space was very small, and you could do a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it had a lot of things I really liked. Like, I love the puzzle mechanic on the ships. I love the private kind of, the marketplace is spread out on the board and you have to kind of go around to different markets to see what's there. Was something I thought was kind of clever. I liked the missions, but not the scoring mechanism. And I definitely liked the kind of move around and explore mechanic, which we've seen in a lot of previous games as well, but it's always fun.
Yeah, I really like the way the missions encourage players to kind of interact in a way that isn't necessarily like I'm gonna steal your territory. Like in a lot of 4X, you like when one player wins, the other one's like you've taken away a lot of their territory. That exterminate part.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I guess maybe this is more of a 3X.
Yeah, well, I think something that specifically like the missions, just it might be more interesting for the missions to be more like Galaxy Trucker is one example I think of, where different people have to fill different, put in different types of resources to accomplish it, and everybody gets a prize, but maybe the first person who finishes it gets a bigger prize.
Right.
And stuff.
What is the consolation prize for runners-up on those missions?
Depends on the mission.
Yeah.
Right, but
It's
there is
money
something,
or-
and it's
yeah.
supposed to be
Cards
balanced
and
to the
money
point of it's okay to touch it and not win it.
Right. But I was a little concerned about some of those things because like one of them was like you have to get use 9 punch cards or something like that over the course of the thing. And I felt like if somebody got there and had 3 punch cards on it, that nobody else is going to come up and be like, oh, I'm going to race you for that. And so now one person's left with like, I have to get it like 7 on there, and maybe the other people will come on and put 1 on just to get the second prize, but nobody's competing and I'm sitting here like dumping resources. That happens in Smash Up a lot on the bases too, where it's like you're just run away and at least other people are like, well, I'll get some points for doing it, but here you're not going to get some points. So it's got to be the amount of effort I have to play to come in second place has to be, the reward has to be worth it.
I guess I missed that part. On the 2 that we had out, there weren't any consolations on the people that got second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they like simpler?
I
easier
don't
ones?
remember what it was.
Because I mean, on the one, it wasn't marked that there was a unless that's like a separate rule you didn't
I
explain.
thought it was
No,
in tiny
it's
print on
it's
the
tiny
top
print
bottom.
at the bottom. There's like the
Okay.
2 trophies for winning it, or the however many trophies for winning it.
Okay,
at the bottom.
because that was one of the things I didn't like, was it seemed like it was winner take all, and the card I looked at didn't have a consolation,
Right.
so maybe it was.
Yeah.
I think we've all only seen a small subset
That is very true.
of especially the larger games, and we've each judged those games on the merits of the subset we've seen. So
Right.
it's hard for big games of that size to be judged adequately in this kind of competition.
Especially here, because like one of the special rare cards that came out was like super wacky and like moved pieces around on the board and stuff, and it was very extreme compared to the little cute little like I get some money and I buy some get some cards and put them away. So it's actually hard to say whether he wants that to be the end game gameplay where huge wacky things are happening or not. So.
And that's certainly something with the theming of this game that I think the designer had a lot of fun with, and something I want to see more of is like, you can tell some of those mission cards are very narrative and funky and
Right.
weird, and I'm like, yeah, I want to get into that, but is that what, I'm not judging the game on a specific mission that's like fun or cool.
Right.
So let's see, how much time do we have? We're coming on the end of our panel time, or possibly just past it. So does everyone know what their favorite game is? Like who you'd vote? Do you ever have a clear idea what that winner is? Should we just do like a raise hand sort of thing and see if that gets us a clear winner or not, or whether we have to debate further?
Sure.
Whose favorite was Dragon Family? Got 3 for Dragon Family. Whose favorite was Point Salad? 2. And then Undiscovered.
I'm still debating.
Well, you can force a tie or be inconsequential. It's up to you.
I rated Dragon Family and Point Salad as my top 2 in my like individual deliberations. But in this discussion, like I totally understand the concerns with both of them, and I'm very interested to know, like one of them is a filler game, and while the other one is still very much a family game, Dragon Family, it does have more knobs to turn and more, like we discussed some of the things that we feel like we could fix about it.
Let me advocate for my choice, because I think something that we don't talk about a lot on these types of panels is, outside of the mechanics, just the story and the alignment of what I'm pretending to do and what I actually do in the game were very tight in that. It was very easy to explain it. The child can play that game and get what he's supposed to be doing. And I think that's very important, more so than the nitpicky mechanics that we all know are easy to change. So like, I get that game, and I get why his 5-year-old gets that game. That's why it's my top choice.
Yeah.
I find the game length I wonder about the game length of Dragon Family though. It is a bit longer. I guess we played half an hour and we hatched 1 or 2 dragons, right? And I'm trying to remember what end condition is exactly. But it seemed like a game
Hatching
that,
3, I think.
Oh, is it just hatching 3? And then maybe we got pretty close to
Yeah.
Layering, somebody layers their third dragon.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. So I would land it at like about a 45-minute game, perhaps. Got it.
It's
I mean,
got to be 30 once you've learned it.
Yeah, my view on that is that I really like the game and I really love the promise of the game and the things we talked about that would fix it. But like, it's, to me, as it is, the pacing and the starving and the not being able to be like, okay, here are my next 3 turns of building the forest, hatching a green dragon, and going to the forest are just sort of unforgivable for me as far as voting it as the best game that we did.
Right,
I
I
think you
definitely
take
had a
the
negative.
intangible parts for granted. I think you think those parts are easy. That's the difference. I mean, that's why I care so much about them, because I think the mechanics are easy to fix. And I know that you and I have the opposite argument a lot, where you're like, I would buy that game if I were allowed to fix it, and I'm like, yeah, no.
It's true, yes.
But yeah.
I thought Dragon Family was adorable. I would just only change I'd want to make to the theme is to expand it to other magical creatures you can raise as well for the mermaid fans or other magical creature fans.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Mermaid eggs and unicorn eggs. And,
Totally.
that was creepy.
Oh boy.
What were you going to
There's the
say, Mike?
expansion plan. Sorry, what?
What's that?
Were you going to say something?
Oh, I said Dragon Family was the most negative experience I had, even though I voted it my top 3 as well. But,
Really?
yeah, but it was because I saw there was potential on some of the stuff, but there were just a lot of things that, like, I played a 2-player game with him, and like there were just too many situations where it's like okay, you restricted my choice, and I'm like, oh, and in multiplayer games, I could see where I just wouldn't have a lot of decisions on some of these things. And I wasn't sure the easy way to solve some of that stuff. So,
Yeah.
So have you been persuaded to vote one way or the other, or do we need to have another vote
I mean,
with the top two?
I voted Dragon Family as number one alone, and with nothing really throwing me the other way, even though I really loved Point Salad as well, I will probably stick with Dragon Family.
So I think, do we have a winner then? Yes, okay. I'm gonna go grab the contestants.
You could just throw in a vote for Gladius if you want. I mean,
Was the people's choice.
it was.
Yeah, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, let's absolutely talk about that. I saw a part of that elephant that was no good at all, and it was a pretty small part. So I don't know.
Sure.
Do you guys want to talk about the people's of choice, like that game while he's doing
Sure,
it?
I'm happy to. I love that game.
You love what that game could be,
I-
but again, I mean, we all nitpick the things we don't like about the games we don't like.
Maybe we
but-
should have the designers come up.
I had fun playing it, flawed as it is. Like, I had fun.
Right.
So,
I like the concept of this fake bet, like the opportunity cost of not making a
Right,
fake
no,
bet.
Yeah,
that's sort of the
seems
biggest thing we
high.
Well,
had.
the
is
big
that-
fix we had was play 2 bet cards and not one. Like, you can't have a bet, bluff bet and only play 1 card.
Right.
But that's, and so many other things, seems like such low-hanging fruit. And this, when we were asking essentially making suggestions by asking questions during the playtest, the answer was typically, and that was really off-putting.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, really, my greatest complaint with Gladius, like, I love the concept, like, I totally want to be betting on these gladiators, and I was very excited by, like, kind of weighing what other people were probably trying to do, but at the end of each round, I felt like my card plays were more random than strategic because I wasn't given enough information every round. So it's
Correct.
like, this is hidden and this is hidden, and I can play all I want on one thing and try and switch things up, but the thing
Well-
is, I really don't know what everyone else is doing.
And I hit some of the darkest corners of that deck. Like, if we're going to play 4 rounds, there was one round in which my superpower was completely unusable.
Right.
There was one round in which all of the starting cards were blank. I think that was the same round, and nothing we could do could change those. So we were literally just playing cards in the darkness. There was not even any modifiers on the table that we could guess which one was going to win. And I threw my lot in with the designer, hoping that she was better at it than everybody else, and she wasn't. So we lost. So yeah, I mean, I had the worst experience possible of that game, but I still sort of saw a lot of things that were like, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? These are so close to a right answer, but not on it. How much
Right.
did you even test this?
yeah, that was sort of
Yeah.
how I enjoyed playing the game. I enjoyed everything we were doing. I thought the card balance and the balance of things we were doing was way off. Like the getting to play a second bet was like Mike said at the end of the game, he was just digging to try to get that card back because it was so good, right?
Yep.
Yeah, everyone should have. I mean, when I looked at the 3 betting cards, I knew in my head we were going to place 2 bets. I not just played, but made like 24 gladiator combat games of bluffing. So I
Yeah.
know what I'm talking
Right,
about.
right,
Yeah.
Right, and being only to play one of them was like, why do I have
Yeah.
this blank?
Right,
What,
right.
what is this doing?
I was certainly surprised that it was going to Kickstarter given the development stage. But I mean,
Well, I'm sorry. Are the designers of that game in here? Like,
Yeah,
who-
Yeah,
they
they're
are.
behind you.
All right, well, now I know that.
Never
But so, so I asked specifically, why are you giving the first turn marker to the person who runs out of cards first? The person who, stops playing upgrades first.
Right.
And they said, well, we're not really sure if going first is good or bad, but then explained to me that they were doing it because going first was good.
it's not.
No,
it's worse.
it's
worse.
so much
Yeah.
worse.
Right.
It's so
Like,
much worse.
I understand that you started out with, we don't know whether going first is bad or good, which is why I asked in the first place. But then you said the reason behind it was blah, 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 going first is good. And I'm like, wait, no, it's not. Going first is not good. And I would rather that the first player were just orbiting because there's no,
Sure.
I can't tell if going first is good or bad. It depends
Or
on
if
the cards,
or,
but,
yeah, or
but
if the
just
first person,
orbit it.
or if the first player, like
Yeah,
we got
or
it.
if
I
it's
got the
always
first
a
player
handicap
market.
for whoever's in the lead.
But
got the
I
first player
stopped
marker.
playing cards not because I was out of cards or saving cards, but because I was out of good things to do, which was a product of a bad draw. That
Sure.
didn't mean I earned or the punishment of going first
Right,
next time.
right, exactly. And in ours, it's like I got the first player marker, and the next gladiator thing was like the person with the first player marker gets to choose who goes first, and I was like, that's a great ability. It was so good, in fact, that after the first player marker got passed to Mike, he was like, okay, I choose Liz to go first, and we were like, no, that's not this round. He was like, no, that should be the rule. Right?
Because I wanted to go last because that's
Yeah.
clearly where you want
Yeah.
to be in a betting game.
Right.
Cool. So I was actually really surprised at the quality across the games for all the contestants.
Yes.
And then Gladius actually got many votes. Like there were actually several close calls before we narrowed down to the top 3. Gladius was one of them, and there's like it's just great that the quality bar is so high for these games for these indie designers.
Yes.
But I think we need to announce the winner now because I'm hungry and it's lunchtime.
That's a perfect reason.
We always make decisions for the wrong reasons.
Yes. So, the winner of the LUCI Award Game Design 2018 is Chris for Dragon Family. You get the award, and you get the box.
Yay.
Yes, and there'll be we'll have a chat with Bevo about the photo and the pictures, take pictures, and then there'll also be I'll take it back to you about the game crafter certificate, but those will be coming. I'll send those an email. But thank you very much. Thank you. Wait, sorry. Wait. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then also Point Salad, thank you very much. Your game was great, and the Twitch feed will be online for people to watch. Yes, so you can catch all of the comments and please.
If they weren't catching it just a few minutes ago.
I
They
do
were
want to
watching in the
say,
hall.
thank
made
you
him walk
so much,
outside to
all
watch.
of the finalists and semifinalists, for sharing your games with us. Like, I honestly enjoyed playing all of them and would like to play all of them again, because I know how frustrating it can be after seeing one person play part of your game and them having these comments. Like, there's a lot of hard work that goes into all of these games, and I'm really excited to join you guys as you develop them further, because they were great.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I thought all these entries were actually very good, and we like to pick apart the parts we don't like, but they were impressive.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
our job, really, is to just to trash. But
To fix.
to fix. To fix.
Yeah, if you want to operate on the heart, you have to crack the chest cavity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, judges.